At the Bullitt County Sheriff's Office in Shepherdsville, Kentucky, the files about the investigation into the murder of Jessica Dishon are neatly stacked in a room made of cinder blocks. One day, there was a tip written on a note on top of the files. Quote, "I can't say there are no more leads," said Larry Carroll, a part-time consultant for the sheriff's office who used to be a homicide detective. Quote, "But the investigation is moving very slowly at this point." He then took the note and refused to talk about what it said. On Thursday, September 10, it will have been 10 years since 17-year-old Jessica went missing. She was found dead not far from her home, but Jessica's family and David "Bucky" Brooks, the neighbor who was once accused of killing her, say they will want to know what happened. Quote, "It's just like a standstill," said Edna Dishon, Jessica's mother. Quote, "I feel like it would be easier if justice was done." On the anniversary of Jessica's death, her family and friends met at her grave to light candles and remember her. Her grave says that she died on September 10, 1999, but her mother said that they can't be sure of that date until the study is done. At the gathering, Jessica's great-uncle Larry Cobb said, quote, "It's an unsolved case, but God says it won't stay that way." He said that what people do in secret will come out. "I hope the truth will be revealed." Jessica was last seen getting ready for school at her Shepherdsville home with her family. Her body was found 17 days later, about 7 miles from her home, in a place called the Salt River Flats, which is a place where trash is dumped. The sheriff's office thought Brooks, who lived next door, was the most likely person to have done it. On January 18, 2001, they caught him. He was set free more than 2 years later, when a judge called a mistrial because the detectives swore that Brooks had failed a lie detector test, which is not allowed in court. They dropped the charges. People outside of Bullitt County were interested in the case because it was so strange. At first, it was said that Jessica went missing with 2 men in a black Camaro. Later, the police found that Jessica's body had been moved from where it was first dumped. Brooks, who says he is not guilty, said in a recent interview that there was a time when he didn't think he would be free today. Quote, "I thought it would be a quick trial and an easy guilty verdict," he said. Edna Dishon said that the family still thinks Brooks did it, and even if he didn't, they think he was involved in some way. Even though the Brooks and Dishon families haven't talked to each other in years, they both say they think the sheriff's office messed up the case from the start. Quote, "They should have looked at more leads instead of just me all the time," said Brooks. Edna Dishon said, criticizing how professional the office was during the first probe. She also said that her daughter can't rest in peace. Carroll is a retired detective from the Louisville Metro Police Department who started working for the sheriff's office in 2007. He thinks that justice will be done in the end, even if it takes another 10 years. Quote, "I'm still feeling very confident," he said. "We're still following up on tips after 10 years. We're still putting a lot of work into this case." Scars are still on families. When Edna Dishon got home from work around 1:30 p.m. on the day Jessica went missing, she saw her daughter's red Pontiac Sandfire in the garage. The teen's cell phone, purse, keys, and backpack were still on the car, and the broken piece of plastic from the bottom of the driver's seat was sitting on the floor. At first, the sheriff's office thought that the Dishons were dealing with a runaway, so they told them to wait for the girl to call. Edna Dishon and their husband Mike called the FBI when Jessica didn't show up. The huge search started. When Jessica's body was found after more than 2 weeks, the police found that she had been hit and killed. Quote, that day, when we got home from work, Jessica wasn't there, Mike Dishon said. Since then, we've been through a lot. Me and Edna miss her a lot. Edna Dishon said that Jessica, who would be 27 now, quote, would probably be doing something exciting if she hadn't been killed. She also said that she doesn't know if Jessica, who worked at Hardee's after school and was in the Reserve Officers Training Corps at Bullitt Central High School, is married or has kids. She was always good with kids. Her two young brothers, Michael and Chris, who are now 23 and 22, remembered that she was like a mother hen to them. Michael was the only one who knew Jessica the best. Quote, he'd just be by himself, she said of him after she died. Some member of the Brooks family still live next door to where the Dishons still live on Ditsville Road. Edna Dishon, who is 44 years old, said that her family has thought about moving, but she doesn't see why. The effects of Jessica's death are, quote, still going to be with us. David Brooks was charged with kidnapping and murder, and his brother Joseph Tommy Brooks was charged with helping him do it and interfering with evidence. These charges were also dropped. Herbert Brooks, another brother, pleaded guilty in 2004 to shooting 12 to 15 times with a handgun at the Dishon's home in 2000, where about 40 relatives were gathering. Since he got out of jail in February 2003, David Brooks, his wife Irene, and their 4 kids have moved several times. They now live in Bardstown. He said he is unemployed and looking for disability payments because he has trouble breathing and arthritis. 2 years after the trial, Brooks was in the news again when he saved 2 neighbor kids from a burning mobile home in Okolona, where he and his family lived at the time, which means he is thinking about starting a church. Quote, all I do is wake up in the middle of the night to see how our kids are doing. He said that being in jail was hard because he couldn't see his kids. The Brookses told their children that he worked in the jail while he was in jail. Quote, they would bring the kids to see me. He remembered. After they left, I couldn't help but miss them. There are also a lot of other worries. The charges of kidnapping and murder were dropped without prejudice, which means that Brooks could be charged again if authorities think they have a better case. Irene Brooks, who is 36 and pregnant, said, quote, I think it would keep happening over and over again if the person who did it doesn't get caught. During the investigation into Jessica's death and the trial of Brooks that followed, the sheriff's office was criticized for a number of things, such as losing evidence, reports, notes, and pictures, and making evidence less reliable. Detective Charles Mann, a 13-year sheriff's office veteran who has since died, told the jury in Brooks' case that the suspect has failed a lie detector test, which led to the mistrial. The FBI was also attacked because it didn't record its talks with Brooks and didn't take exact notes. Paul Parsley, who was sheriff at the time of the investigation and is now retired, said that because the case was hard, if he had to do it again, he would ask the Kentucky State Police for help. Quote, I had watched this little girl grow up, said Parsley, 67, who also knew Brooks before she was killed. Parsley, who lived in Shepherdsville, said that the case is still the worst one he worked on since he started working for the sheriff's office in 1978. He went on to say that he and his deputies worked on the case late into the night. Quote, I'd love for it to be solved. Let the family get some peace. Mike Mann, the Commonwealth's attorney for Bullitt, and J. McAuliffe, who used to be the chief deputy for the Bullitt sheriff, both want the same thing. Quote, everyone in Bullitt County thinks about it, said McAuliffe, who made a public plea for the killer to come forward in 2005 article in the Courier Journal. He thinks that a statement made on someone's deathbed could be the key to solving the case. He said, quote, "Whoever killed her is still out there." When man works on other cases, he still thinks about the killings. During the Brooks trial, quote, "We used everything we had," he said. "It's not that I wish I could do it again. I hope it will be worked out." Since Jessica died 10 years ago, Bullitt County has changed a lot. From 1999 to 2008, the county's population grew by more than 23%. The Hardys where Jessica worked is gone, and the bootleg barbecue took its place for a while before it too closed. The Salt River bottoms, where her body was found, have been filled in, which makes it harder to find out what happened, said Carol, who is also a deputy coroner with the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. Carol thinks that finding out who moved her body at the dump site could be the key to finding the killer. There is evidence that her body was moved about 15 feet in the 24 hours before it was found. Police think this was done so that her body could be found. Carol doesn't understand why someone would go back, pick up Jessica, and move her so that someone could find her. Before he got the new tip, he said he hadn't done much on the case since April because there were no more clues. He has used up other forensic clues, some of which were messed up by other detectives. Several people said they had seen Jessica with Jason Danford and James Calder in Danford's black Camaro after she went missing. In 2006, Danford was killed in a car crash and neither guy was charged. Calder could not be reached, but both he and Danford denied having anything to do with Jessica's death in 2002. Carol wouldn't say if the police had any ideas about who was responsible for the crime. When Jessica was killed, Donnie Tinnell, who is now the sheriff of Carroll and Bullitt, worked for Louisville Metro Police. Tinnell, who was chosen in 2006, said that there were issues with how the cases was handled at first. Tinnell said, quote, "It was hard to go back and fix the mistakes. Once you lose control of evidence, you can never use it in court." Trying to solve the case, but he said that Carol is the best chance for the office to figure out who did it. Quote, "He's as good as it gets," Tinnell said. Carol worked for Louisville police on old cases, like the loss of Anne Gottlieb, who was 12 years old and went missing on the first day of her summer break in 1983. In December, 25 years after the crime, police said they think a child abuser named Gregory Oakley took her and killed her. Oakley died in 2002. Edna Dishon thinks that she will find out what happened to Jessica soon. Quote, "My mother didn't know until she died. My dad didn't know until he died," she said. "Will both my husband and I die without knowing what happened?" A Kentucky man is accused of taking his sister, Jessica Dishon, from her driveway 14 years ago and killing her. In October 2013, 55-year-old Stanley Dishon was charged with killing 17-year-old Jessica Dishon and taking her away. The girl was last seen on September 10, 1999, outside her home in Bullitt County, which is about 20 miles south of Louisville. The second charge in the case is against Dishon. In 2003, the case against a neighbor named David Bucky Brooks finished in a mistrial. Bullitt County Sheriff Dave Greenwell said that Dishon was charged after a murder of tips over the last 5 or 6 months, and the second look at all the evidence in the case. Greenwell put his head in his hands and cried for a moment as he said, quote, "It's a big relief to see something from so long ago come to a close. For years, it felt like you never did enough." After Jessica Dishon went missing, the government started a huge search for her. Her body was found 17 days later in a wooded area 7 miles from her home. It had been beaten and killed. Since then, the unsolved case has been a cloud over the 74,000-person county in Kentucky Snobs area. After Brooks' mistrial, Jessica's case remained a puzzle that had not been solved, but police officials would sometimes talk about new leads and possible breakthroughs. Greenwell wouldn't talk about the evidence against Stanley Dishon or say what exactly led him being arrested. Greenwell also wouldn't say whether or not the suspect was helping the police. In 2005, Dishon was found guilty of sodomy and sent to state jail for 8 years and 8 months. He was supposed to get out of jail on September 6, but he was taken back in because he was charged with sexually abusing a girl younger than 12 in 1982. Dishon has said he is not guilty and asked for a public attorney in that case. As of Wednesday afternoon, the court file didn't name a defense lawyer. Stanley Dishon has been in trouble with the law before for having sex with young girls. When Jessica Dishon went missing, Greenwell was the first detective to arrive on the scene. He cleared Brooks of having anything to do with her death. Greenwell said, "From my point of view, we charged the wrong person. Brooks is not a suspect in any way," I said. John Spain R. Jr., a lawyer in Shepherdsville who represents Brooks, said that the charge makes his client feel better. Spain R. said he gave the sheriff's office his old defense files to help with the investigation. He didn't know who they were looking into, though he said that the charge gives Brooks, quote, "some vindication," but that his client's name would be cleared if Stanley Dishon was found guilty. "I'm glad that Miss Dishon will finally get what she deserves," Spain Hour said. "The only bad thing that ever happened to Mr. Brooks was that he was a neighbor in the wrong place at the wrong time."